What's good, family? So today we're going to be taking a look at the entire Sasha Banks and Naomi story, what happened, what has happened, and I guess I'll give my opinion of what could potentially happen in the future. So we'll get into that. Subscribe if you want to. Drop a like on the video again if you want to. And yeah, man, I did a few of these on my TikTok, but I'll give you guys the overall synopsis. And I know there was a lot of people asking about the full story, so we're going to just take it at the value of basically the information we've been given. I'll also provide fact and fiction type of scenarios where there's certain things that were relayed to be authentic and they weren't. They were actually false. It was just a facade created by specific wrestling companies to articulate clickbaits and things like that. Fightful is run by Sean Ross, so usually 10 out of 10, not usually would indicate that it'd be sometimes. He is literally been right every single time about everything. So when we pontificate upon this, it's going to indicate that all the information being provided will be factual because it's coming directly from Sean Ross. So let's go ahead and proceed and get into it. First things first, right? Sasha Banks and Naomi, they walked out of Raw. Okay, we know this already. Now, the reason why they walked out is what's been a little bit clueless to a great deal of people. We're going to speak on it, okay? First things first, we'll just go through the article just to make it quick. Initially, one thing I would like to point out is that Sasha Banks and Naomi would be involved in a six-pack challenge, which would have crowned a new number one contender for the Raw Women's Championship. That right there. Why are the tag team champions being added to the Raw Women's title picture? It's quite simple, actually. Star power. There was never a clear indication that any of these two women would win should they have won the six-pack challenge. There's no way that they would have won the Raw Women's Championship as they are currently tag team champions. All right, so let me just make that clear. This was all just to boost ratings, etc., etc. However, one thing that I will point out, this match was announced after Sasha Banks and Naomi already walked out, which I know is not the things you guys are used to hearing and or reading about. I know there's a lot of people that were like, oh, well, they walked out during the show. That's not true. And the reason, I'll actually show proof of that as we continue. We'll come back to that, so just remember. Immediately after WWE announced the match on the air, switched into a singles match between Becky and Asuka, announcing that Naomi and Sasha Banks have left the building. Our premium Fightful Select service reported more details regarding the incident that led to their departure, namely Sasha Banks' displeasure with the creative direction of the match. There's also more than one thing that has been led or that has led to Sasha Banks, specifically herself, walking out, but we'll go back to that in a moment as well. Tonight's Raw main event changed after Sasha Banks and Naomi walked out, we're told. Those that we've heard from at tonight's Raw, WWE Tag Team Champion Sasha Banks was not satisfied with creative associated with her plans for the evening. As Fightful Select reported, Sasha was to be involved in a six-pack challenge with Naomi, Asuka, Doudrop, and Nikki Ash. During the Raw broadcast, it was announced that it was then changed, Asuka versus Becky, and they said that Sasha Banks and Naomi left the building. We're told Sasha had a meeting with Vince and voiced her displeasure about the situation and would not budge on the stance. Vince McMahon was also said to be unwilling to budge. We haven't specifically heard that Naomi was involved, but she and Sasha Banks left before the start of the show. If they left before the start of the show, right? And this isn't me trying to sway you guys in either or. This is me providing factual evidence to support what I'm saying. It's pronounced evidence, bro. I wanted to make it sound fancy. If Sasha Banks and Naomi left the building before the show, okay, follow me here. Why would WWE still announce the six-pack challenge as the show went on the air when there was no clear indication and or producer and or referee signed to the match in the first place? Because the two women that were involved out of the six were gone to begin with. Ergo, they could not have produced it. They could not have had a referee assigned to it, and it wasn't going to happen in the first place. Now, this is a matter of the whole card subject to change thing. However, I think WWE announced the match to be petty so that they can get one up on them and indicate that Sasha Banks and Naomi left. And we'll come back to that as well in a moment. It's worth noting that as of time WWE Raw rundowns went out, there was, again, no assigned producer or referee for the main match. It was also highlighted in red, indicating a change could be happening. Because, again, they knew Sasha and Naomi left. So they were going to change it to Asuka and Becky regardless. We're told that were hastily produced segments to set up the change, but they were also reflected in the rundowns that were handed out before the show. There was also a thing where Becky did a backstage promo. It was her idea to go on there and, like, shake it up real quick and just think on the fly to try and get that main event kind of like eyes on it. By the time it was announced on WWE TV, word had made its way outside of the company. Several people backstage at the show confirmed to Fightful that the duel indeed left. In an update, we've learned that Naomi was actually scheduled to win the match. Now, here is where things get interesting. She was not supposed to pin Sasha Banks like a lot of the rumors were saying. Naomi was never going to win and pin Sasha Banks. She was going to win the match, but not pin Sasha Banks, okay? So that was not the reason why she left. Another common misconception that I'm so tired of hearing. Oh, well, Sasha Banks has left, she's done this before. Look at WrestleMania, blah, blah. No. She lost the match and then requested a leave of absence due to her having depression. She even said it in the WWE 24 special that she had, which is live on Peacock in the States and the WWE Network outside for only $9.99 US. She literally wrote and said it in the thing, quote, I requested time off. Originally, the plan was for 30 days, but I told Vince I needed more time. That's when you saw her in Japan wrestling, practicing. You saw her doing all these other things, healing properly, etc., etc. Moving on. Another reason why Sasha Banks left, and I'll say it now just before we go any further. Originally, the spot that she was supposed to have was to win the Royal Rumble, which, if you guys remember, that's when she came back and everybody was super happy to see her, etc., etc. And she was going to face Charlotte Flair in the main event. Then Ronda Rousey decided to come back, and those plans were nixed. So that was another boiling point for Ms. Banks. WWE later issued a statement. In the statement that claimed Naomi and Sasha Banks were uncomfortable working with two of the scheduled women for the match. That is a lie, because they were not uncomfortable, as they have wrestled those ladies multiple times. Despite having previously worked with them, the match was also scheduled to include Nikki Ash and Doudrop, which was going to set up a tag team match down the line between Nikki Ash and Doudrop, Banks, and Naomi. So again, this is just them trying to, lie. This is literally from WWE, and it reads, when Sasha Banks and Naomi arrived at the arena this afternoon, they were informed of their participation in the main event of tonight's Monday Night Raw. In other words, they arrived way before the show even began. During the broadcast, they walked into the head of talent relations, John Laurinaitis' office, with their suitcase in hand and placed their tag team championship belts on the desk and walked out. Now, WWE is writing that they put the belts on the desk and they walked out of John Laurinaitis' office. That part is true. However, what they did not state was that they put, quote, during the broadcast, they walked into the head of relations office and left. Walked out. That's more or less, that's what they wrote. Sean Ross is reporting that prior to the show beginning is when Naomi and Sasha Banks walked out, which is again my point as to why they even announced the match in the first place. Monday Night Raw is a scripted live TV show whose characters are expected to perform the requirements of their contract. We regret we were unable to deliver as advertised tonight's main event. They claim they weren't respected enough as tag team champions, and even though they had 8 hours to rehearse their match. 8 hours, okay? That means they were there 8 hours prior to the freaking show going live. They claimed that, let's say the main event was at 11. So they had 5 hours prior to 8 o'clock, which would have been 3 p.m. Eastern time, okay? 5 hours before the show started, hypothetically, because if you want to include the 3 hours of the show, then technically it was 8. Unless if they're talking about 8 before 8 o'clock, in which case that's 12. Either way, it was more than enough time, okay? Even though they've had matches with those individuals in the past with no consequence. There was no need for them to say that they felt uncomfortable working with anyone, because that's not true. They also did not need to say that during the broadcast they went and did what they did. They could have simply stated, if they would have said prior to the show, though, then they would have made themselves look like idiots because they announced the main event match. So I understand, they're not dumb. WWE is pretty smart. We'll continue to have more as the story develops. Okay. I'll be right back with the next article. Now here's where things get juicy. On the May 20th edition of WWE SmackDown, okay, Michael Cole announced that the WWE Women's Tag Team Champions have been suspended indefinitely and that there will be a future tournament to crown new champions. This is the part that makes me laugh because there are no tag teams. You have Natalya and Shayna. Go ahead, I'll wait. Who else? Exactly. You could put Nikki Ash and Doudrop together. That's 2 teams, hypothetically. Go ahead, I'll wait. Who else? Liv and Rhea split up. Becky Lynch doesn't have any friends technically in kayfabe. Charlotte is injured. Ronda's the women's champion. Raquel Gonzalez just debuted and she doesn't have anything yet either. Aaliyah is solo, hasn't been showing with any other woman on the roster. Shotzi's solo. So what are they gonna do? Xia Li hasn't been seen since she quote unquote turned freaking heel. What are they gonna do? Exactly. They have nobody. Unless if they bring women in from NXT and have them be allowed to compete in the tournament, then it would make a bit more sense because now you can have Roxanne and Cora Jade. You open up the doors to have that's kind of it. I don't know who else would be. I mean, Toxic Attraction, I guess they could come in. That's another two teams they have right there. Um, they also had. They could just pair a couple of the girls in NXT, I guess. You know, they had Wendy Chu being paired up with Dakota Kai, but then she got released. Then they paired up Wendy Chu with Roxanne, but then Roxanne decided to go back with Cora Jade, as you saw in the last NXT. It's a whole cluster F of endeavors. And then matters continue to escalate even further because now Banks and Naomi have had all their merchandise pulled from WWE Shop's website. Like, matter of fact, we'll do this in real time because I don't want anyone to think I'm lying of any kind. What the? Bro, yes, we want to go to WWEshop.com. It's fine. See what I mean? They think it's a suspicious website. Hilarious. All right. Sasha Banks. Sorry, no results found for Sasha Banks. I did not edit this. I swear. I swear on my channel I didn't edit this. Okay. Let's type in Naomi. Took my hands. Again. Looks like you've taken a wrong... wait. It says, it looks like you've taken a wrong turn. You're in parts unknown. All right. So, with that being said, the other thing that was a tipping point for Sasha Banks, she was supposed to face Ronda Rousey, Charlotte Flair, like I said, and then Ronda decided to come back into wrestling. Ronda is, I will admit, technically a bigger draw, but to wrestling fans, in my opinion, Sasha is the bigger draw. I think that Sasha having her star power as of late with the recent acquisitions of her working with Disney, the Star Wars, the Mandalorian and all that, having other things that have been happening outside of the company. She's been trending like crazy, especially with what's happening now. New York Post even posted this article. I think her stock is probably higher now than it's ever been, ever. There's also another article that states that her contract is set to expire soon. I'll show you guys that real quick. Now, this next one is being reported by Sportscada, which, again, they're usually pretty accurate and spot on, too. This one, I would say it's not wrong because I have no other proof otherwise, but it's also, I can't confirm it 100% only because Sean Ross himself hasn't said it. And he's, again, 100% accurate all the time, or at least with everything that I've seen recently. I just got into the wrestling stuff maybe about a year ago. But anyways, former WWE writer Kazim Famoyed, I probably butchered that, has stated that Sasha Banks' contract will expire sooner than later. Sasha Banks has been the talk of professional wrestling ever since her and her tag team partner Naomi walked out before Raw. The duo has been dropped silent about their reason for the walkout. They have not announced anything. As a matter of fact, Naomi has removed all instances of WWE from her line. Sasha Banks, even like a week or two prior to even being suspended, had basically unfollowed damn near everybody except for like 6 people. So she didn't do this because she walked out of Raw. She did it way beforehand. I just want to make that clear as well. So the last and final thing. When will we see Sasha Banks and Naomi back? Honestly, we don't know because they're suspended. I want to say SummerSlam, but that's at the end of July. If there is a new women's tag team champion being crowned, the original objective of all of this was to have Naomi fight Bianca Belair for the Raw Women's Championship, and ultimately Sasha Banks will face Ronda Rousey. Both make the champions look good and lose the matches while still being tag team champions. That was another thing that, creative-wise, Sasha was not down for. Why the hell would you have tag team champions go into individual single storylines when you have other women on the roster who can handle that as well? It just doesn't make any sense to me. So that was another point that I wanted to articulate in closing, basically. You were going to have your tag team champions job to your singles champions. Now, there's other people that speculate that these titles don't have prestige. I would disagree. When Sasha Banks and Bayley held them the 2 times, they were the talk of the town. Have any other women done so since then? I would say the Iconics were doing pretty good, but then again, they were off TV for quite some time. creative themselves don't know what the hell to do with those championships. I think they were just announced just to get certain people to stop complaining about it. And that's not, that's not their fault. They're doing the best they can. But they had such a diverse roster at one point before so many women got released that they could have done so much more with the tag team championships. And it's just baffling to me that they have all this talent and they don't know what to do with it. Sasha Banks and Naomi, all they want to do is elevate the division as a whole and get more eyes on women's wrestling. That's all they want to do, man. They just want to make wrestling for women better. And them being the tag team champions can help elevate an entire division that has been subsidized by lack of creative for the better part of the title's entire existence. Let me know what you guys think about all this. If I was all over the place, I do apologize. But you guys read everything and saw it for yourselves. I try to be as accurate as possible just so there's no, flim flam. Thank you guys for watching. And I'm out this piece.